Have you ever been scrolling, maybe on TikTok or somewhere else, seen a clip about, I don't know, a notorious criminal, or maybe a really dark fictional character, and then you look at the comments, and it's kind of deeply unsettling because you see people, and it seems especially young women, who aren't just like fascinated. They seem genuinely attracted to the person who did these terrible things.
Yeah,
You know,
even really violent offenders. So today, we're doing a deep dive into the psychology behind this. It's called hybristophilia. Basically, that's the term for sexual interest in and attraction to people who commit crimes. We're going to focus specifically on how this is showing up with Gen Z women, particularly on platforms like TikTok.
That's right. Our mission here is to unpack a recent and pretty robust academic study. It came in two parts. First, the researchers did a content analysis. They looked at TikTok itself. What kind of stuff are Gen Z women actually watching and commenting on when it comes to offenders, both real and fictional? And then, crucially, they did a follow-up survey. They wanted to know which specific personality traits predict this attraction among young women who use TikTok daily. So we're looking at the what and the why.
Exactly. It's a fascinating look at how these sort of timeless psychological drives are intersecting with today's really powerful algorithm-driven social media. We're using their data to get a handle on something that for a long time people just treated as a weird, maybe isolated cultural thing.
Okay, let's unpack this because you're right. The platform might be new, but the attraction itself, that's not. We really need to start with the historical context, the psychology behind this attraction to deviance.
Absolutely. Hybristophilia, it's overwhelmingly seen in women, and it has a long history. It often centers on these high-profile, usually violent male criminals. Think about figures like Ted Bundy back in the day. He received piles of fan mail. Some of it was explicit, and it often led to actual relationships, even marriage proposals, while he was locked up.
Which is just baffling on the surface, but is there an evolutionary theory behind it? Like, why would that happen?
Well, one perspective from evolutionary psychology suggests that historically being attracted to a rule breaker might have been linked, maybe mistakenly, with higher status or reproductive success. The idea is that the offender's dominance, their willingness to take risks, to ignore social rules, maybe those traits get misread by our sort of older brain wiring as signs of strength, power, the ability to protect and provide, even if it's totally distorted.
A biological system kind of misfiring in the modern world.
Pretty much. Seeking a protector, but finding a predator instead.
Wow. Okay, that's a dark thought. And psychologically, one of the big explanations you always hear is the savior complex, right? The whole "I can fix him" idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, the literature talks about these serial killer groupies who seem to genuinely believe their love is powerful enough to like wash away all the cruelness and evilness. They see a wounded inner child in the offender that they need to heal.
It's this intense, nurturing drive, but directed in a really dangerous way. And yeah, that desire to save often connects back to certain risk factors researchers have noted. Things like low self-esteem, maybe social isolation, sometimes the lack of a positive father figure, or, importantly, a history of childhood trauma or abuse. The thinking is those experiences might create a vulnerability, a sort of predisposition to seek relationships where they feel needed, or maybe where they feel they can finally win by fixing a difficult partner.
But we have to be careful here because the sources were clear.
Yeah.
It's not always that simple. There were conflicting findings.
Right.
Not every woman who shows these tendencies fits that profile. Some have successful careers, stable lives, and report little or no history of that kind of trauma, which suggests the attraction is, well, it's more complicated than just being a response to past hurt.
And that complexity really leads us into the core debate this study tried to get at. What's driving it at a personality level? Are these women maybe overly empathetic? Identifying too strongly with the offender's supposed troubled past? Or is it the opposite? Are they perhaps more callous themselves, more manipulative, drawn to the power, the danger?
And the background research seemed to lean towards the second explanation, didn't it? It mentioned a manipulator-pragmatist subtype being common among women dating offenders, suggesting it's less about healing and more about maybe a desire for control or power within that relationship dynamic.
Exactly. And that mention of manipulation and power brings us straight to the dark triad. That's the cluster of personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. High scores on these are linked to antisocial behaviors. We need to keep this framework in mind, especially Machiavellianism, psychopathy, because they become really key when we look at the results of the second study.
Okay, so we've got the history, the psychology, the potential personality links. But how does this actually play out now? Online, specifically on a platform like TikTok. Let's get into study one. This was the content analysis part, right? They looked at 66 videos, almost 100 comments from Gen Z users, all focusing on romanticizing or like glorifying criminals, both real and fictional.
Yeah, this gives us the what. What does this romanticization actually look like on the platform? What are the common themes?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's break down those 7 major themes they found.
Okay, the biggest one, showing up in almost 22% of the content, was the halo effect. This is a classic cognitive bias. Basically, physical attractiveness clouds judgment. The researchers pointed out how conventionally good-looking offenders, they mentioned Ted Bundy again, or the Menendez brothers, were consistently defended. People tried to minimize their guilt, explain away their actions.
But the less attractive ones, like John Wayne Gacy, no such luck. They didn't get that sympathetic or romantic spin. It's purely about looks. I remember that quote they pulled about Cameron Herron, the guy convicted of vehicular homicide. Someone commented, "I know he did something wrong, but he is so cute. Like the cuteness somehow outweighs the crime. It's jarring."
Absolutely jarring. And that halo effect gets amplified by the second theme, actor-offender transference. This is where attraction to the actor playing a criminal gets transferred onto the real criminal.
Oh, yeah, we definitely saw that with the Dahmer series on Netflix. People seem to be confusing Evan Peters, the actor, with Jeffrey Dahmer himself. And because Peters is seen as attractive, it fueled this weird romanticization of Dahmer. The study even tracked a TikTok account dedicated to romanticizing Dahmer that popped up right after the series launched. A direct link.
It's a powerful effect. Okay. Theme 3 was sympathy, romance, and APD, that's antisocial personality disorder. This showed up in about 18% of the content. This is basically romanticizing those classic APD traits. The superficial charm, the lack of empathy, sometimes even the violence. It's like the bad boy appeal taken to a dangerous extreme.
And people were explicit about it.
Oh, yeah. Users would comment on videos about characters like Joe Goldberg from You, saying things like, "I want a man like Joe." They seem drawn to that intensity, that obsessive focus, even though it's predatory.
That intensity connects to theme 4, doesn't it? Protection and loyalty, which is about 17%. This one glorified really possessive behavior as if it was devotion.
Definitely. The whole mafia man fantasy plays into this. The comments often blurred the lines, making violence and extreme possessiveness sound like ultimate loyalty. You see things like, "Guys like you would burn the world for the person you love. I'm staying with the criminals." It's normalizing extreme control as love. It's dangerous.
Which loops us right back to theme 5. I can fix him. That showed up in about 10% of the posts. This is where users explicitly downplay the danger. They claim their love can somehow cure the offender. That quote, "I know he has killed many women, but I can fix him." It's just chilling. It shows a total disconnect from the reality of the violence.
Complete cognitive dissonance. It's alarming. Now, theme 6 was a bit different, Gen Z irony. This was around 11–12%. This is using dark humor, sarcasm, to talk about these offenders and their crime.
All right, like those really morbid jokes. "Ted really knew how to knock him dead. Ha ha ha, I love him." Or that kind of fatalistic humor. "Well, if I die, I die." It feels like a defense mechanism sometimes.
It might be, for some, but the researchers and others worry about it. Does this irony actually desensitize people? Does it normalize horrific crimes, especially for younger viewers who might not get the sarcasm, think it's a genuine endorsement?
That's a really valid concern, especially when you consider the final theme, which was the darkest, victim fantasy. It was smaller, about 7–8%, but deeply disturbing. This is where some users were actually fantasizing about being victimized, specifically factually, by attractive offenders.
Yeah, it's an extreme manifestation. It seems to reflect this fascination with the killer's absolute power, their total control. That comment you brought up earlier, "make me sleep for eternity," under a Bundy video, I mean, that's just devastating. It suggests this desire for complete surrender, maybe bordering on masochism, possibly even an extension of something like Stockholm Syndrome, but turned into this weird, generalized online fantasy.
It's crucial we pause there, because this isn't just about finding fictional villains cool. This is attraction to real, deadly, controlling power expressed in the most extreme way.
Absolutely. It goes way beyond simple romanticizing. It touches on a kind of psychological surrender that really highlights how dangerous this content can be.
Okay, so that's the themes swirling around on TikTok. Let's shift to the why. Study 2 surveyed 95 Gen Z women, all daily TikTok users, to figure out what predicts this attraction.
Right, and the first big finding was about how media actually influences this. They discovered that just seeing this kind of hybristophilic content, like just having it pop up on your feed, that exposure alone didn't significantly predict whether someone scored high on hybristophilia.
So scrolling past it isn't the main issue. It's not passive. It's about what you do next.
Precisely. The absolute crucial finding was about engagement. Actively choosing to watch the videos, maybe watching them repeatedly or liking them, that was the strong predictor. The numbers were stark. For every step up in engagement level, like going from just avoiding the content to watching it to actively liking it, there's an average jump of almost 8 points on their Hybristophilia scale.
Wow. Okay, so that speaks directly to the power of the algorithm, doesn't it? When you engage, you tell the algorithm more like this, and it just keeps feeding you similar, maybe even darker content, creating this echo chamber that reinforces and normalizes these attractions.
Exactly right. It's a feedback loop. It can really warp perception over time.
Yeah.
So the next question is, who gets pulled into this loop? What personality traits make someone more likely to engage and develop these feelings? This is where their personality testing came in. And the results were really specific, maybe even surprising for some. They found that neither general empathy levels nor narcissism significantly predicted hybristophilia scores in their sample.
Wait, hold on. So the data is saying it's not primarily the highly empathetic person falling for the wounded bird they want to fix. If empathy isn't the driver, then what is?
That's where the dark triad results really hit home. They found that Machiavellianism, that tendency towards being cynical, manipulative, using others for your own goals, that did significantly predict hybristophilia scores. It accounted for about 8.4% of the difference between people's scores.
Okay, so manipulativeness plays a
Yeah.
role. But you said there was something even stronger.
Much stronger. The biggest predictor by far was psychopathy. High scores on psychopathy traits things like impulsivity, thrill-seeking, lack of remorse, callousness accounted for a massive 21.2% of the variance in hybristophilia scores.
21%. That's huge in this kind of research.
It's enormous. It really overshadows the Machiavellianism finding and definitely pushes empathy out of the picture as a primary driver here.
So does this kind of flip the script on the traditional savior complex idea, at least for this online Gen Z context? Is it less about wanting to heal the perceived wounded inner child and more about something else, like a draw to the thrill, the power, the danger itself?
That's certainly what this data strongly suggests. It shifts the focus away from nurture, away from fixing someone else, and more towards inherent personality traits in the observer that resonate with dominance and, frankly, darkness. It suggests the attraction is more closely tied to these manipulative and psychopathic characteristics, that these women might be drawn, maybe unconsciously, less to the idea of saving someone and more to the raw power, the control, the sheer excitement associated with a dangerous partner.
That really reframes that whole "I can fix him" narrative. Maybe it's sometimes just the socially acceptable way to frame a deeper desire for that kind of intense, high-stakes power dynamic. It's interesting, though, because when they asked the participants directly, their feelings were mixed, right? About half felt kind of indifferent, saying things like, "Oh, I just don't care, I don't take it seriously."
Yes, and quite a few tried to draw a sharp line between fiction and reality. They'd argue, romanticizing a character like Joe Goldberg as harmless entertainment, it's different from glorifying a real killer.
But Study One already showed us how blurry that line gets online. How the fictional portrayals, especially through attractive actors, directly fuel the idealization of real criminals and their traits. That transference is real.
It absolutely is. And that brings us back to the Gen Z irony thing. Some users might see it as just dark humor, a way to cope with disturbing topics. But the risk of normalization, especially for younger audiences who might miss the ironic layer and just absorb the romanticization, that risk is significant.
So what does this all mean when we put it all together for the listener?
Well, I think the big takeaway is that hybristophilia, especially as we're seeing it amplified online among Gen Z women, isn't just one simple thing. It's not passive. It seems to be significantly driven by active engagement with digital content that plays on known biases like the halo effect. And crucially, this engagement appears to resonate most strongly with individuals who score higher on specific personality traits, Machiavellianism, and particularly psychopathy. This suggests a powerful, perhaps underlying attraction to the dynamics of power, control, and maybe even the danger associated with offenders.
Right. And the findings really underscore how important it is to understand this interplay between media consumptions, especially algorithmic feeds, and these underlying personality traits. It shows how criminal behavior can become normalized. It also suggests that any interventions can't just focus on, say, healing past trauma. They also need to address these complex dynamics around control, dominance, and maybe the thrill-seeking elements tied to psychopathic traits.
And importantly, this research actually gave us a tool for that. The researchers developed a new Hybristophilia scale designed to measure these tendencies in people who aren't, clinical patients. This could potentially help with early identification, maybe guide prevention strategies for young women who might be susceptible to these dangerous relationship patterns. So, to recap the really striking finding, high levels of Machiavellianism and even more so, psychopathy seem to be strong predictors of this attraction. It points towards a deep seated draw, perhaps, to dominance and thrill.
Which leaves us with a final, maybe provocative thought for you, the listener. We've talked a lot about the I can fix him mentality, that desire to heal the criminal. But if this attraction is actually best predicted by personality traits linked to manipulation, power-seeking, and psychopathy, does that desire to save a dangerous partner sometimes mask something else? Could it be an individual's subconscious pursuit of a really powerful, dominant relationship dynamic, even knowing the risks? Is the fixing really about gaining control rather than offering care? It makes you think, doesn't it? How often do you or people you see online really draw a clear line between being drawn to a fictional villain and minimizing the terrifying reality of a real criminal act? Something to reflect on. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today.